This is Dr.Saiful Ahad from the Department of English, Navanalanda Mahavihar, Nalanda. Dear students, as usual, I have come before you with another topic. Today's topic is Francis Bacon's Of Revenge. This paper is especially designed and meant for MA English 2ndSem, paper 5th. Before I actually go into my details of Bacon's Of Revenge, let me tell you a few words about Francis Bacon. We already know that Francis Bacon is a very eminent Elizabethan prose writer, essay writer. He is a writer who has garnered a lot of experiences from the different areas of his life, from the different spheres of life, and he has brought to bear those experiences within the realm of his essays. His essays are always centered on the themes that pertain to life, like love, death, friendship, revenge, justice, mercy, so on and so forth. In the same way, today's topic, which is of revenge, tells you about the nature and character of revenge. Dear students, revenge in common people's terms is a kind of feeling that we have towards someone who has done something wrong. This is human nature, that if somebody has committed certain crime, somebody has committed certain mistakes, we are naturally offended and we are passing through a time of mental stress and mental psychopathological elements pronounce on our heart and mind, and we do not rest until and unless we have avenged our wrongs. Now, Francis Bacon wants to say that revenge is not always good. It does not do good to those who have taken revenge upon those who have committed crimes, because on practical grounds, he says, if you analyze that if somebody has deliberately or not deliberately committed crime against you, and if you are committed or determined to take your revenge, nothing happens to that person. Rather, you also fall within that category of the criminal. Why? Because he has committed crime and you are committing the same crime. So you have become the judge, and it means that you have taken the law in your hand. Francis Bacon very politely requests us that it is better to forgive and forget revenge, and it is good to start living with love and affection. If we take revenge, we develop a nature that becomes vindictive, that becomes revengeful, and people start hating us. Revenge is not approvable on any grounds. Revenge is a kind of wild justice, and this revenge, which is a kind of wild justice, should be strenuously avoided. And Francis Bacon says that this feeling of revenge should be weeded out in the same way as unnecessary growths in plants or in farms has to be removed. If we do not remove the unwanted growths, the weeds, the shrubs in the farms, it will also badly affect those plants that are flourishing. So, dear students, we have to keep in our mind that it is a noble act if we forgive someone. We have to be merciful rather than vindictive. And you must have studied William Shakespeare's A Merchant of Venice, where the character Portia delivers a very, very ethical speech on the quality of mercy. What is actually mercy? How does it help both the giver and receiver? She says that mercy is not a strain, it comes spontaneously, and it is twice blessed. It blesseth him that giveth and him that receiveth. If we analyze this Shakespearean line, we will come to understand that if we are trying to be merciful, we not only help others, rather, a kind of positive feeling comes into our mind, into our heart, that we have forgiven. So, in the same vein, revenge should be taken, and revenge should not always be kept in our mind, because Francis Bacon says that if we are always thinking about taking revenge, our mind becomes hampered and we tend to live miserable life, unfortunate life, a life that is full of tension and depression and worries. Dear students, very practically, Francis Bacon says in this essay also that that which is past is dead and gone and is irrevocable, and wise men have nothing to do with the past. Wise men do not ponder over what is gone. It is their wisdom that teaches them to pause and ponder in the present moment and to work for the betterment of the future. Because if we neglect our present action and we are all the time worrying about what has already taken place and there is no recovery of that, we are not going to be wise. Dear students, if you have ever been a student of Bacon, you know that Bacon's essays are always worldly wise, and they are always telling you certain certain facts of life, which if you test on the touchstone of practicality, they emerge very, very good and worth practicing. Why? There are two things about revenge that Francis Bacon has said. He says primarily that two sorts of revenges can be taken into consideration. First, public revenge and private revenge. What is public revenge and what is private revenge? We have to try to illustrate. Private revenge is something which exists between very fewer number of persons, say two persons, three persons, or four persons. Suppose if somebody has caused me any harm, maybe physical harm or emotional harm, I nurture a grievances against him. And this nurturing of the grievance makes me unhappy, miserable, and unfortunate. Nobody knows it. I may take revenge upon that man, or I may not take revenge of that man. That hardly matters. It does not involve the loss of so many people. And this can be taken. This can be taken, but there has to be a caution, there has to be precaution. What is the precaution that has to be taken? You must take precaution that if you are taking the revenge, there should not be any kind of activity where you also fall within the rigmarole of the rules of law or laws of rules. Because if you take revenge upon someone and the law also holds you responsible, holds you culprit, so what is the use of taking that revenge which makes yourself a culprit once again, and you also have to go to jail, or you also have to pay the penalty for that? So the wisdom does not lie in this. But there is one sort of revenge that is called public revenge. For example, if Julius Caesar has committed mistake, if Henry the fourth or third has committed mistake, If Pertinax has committed mistake, these are the three historical characters that Francis Bacon has mentioned in his path-breaking essay. Julius Caesar, Pertinax, Henry III. So this revenge pertains a group collects and they take revenge upon that man. So that is advisable, that can be taken, there is no harm, but still you have to keep in your mind that you should not fall within the category of the rule of law, because it will amount to the same that you went to take revenge upon someone and you yourself fell within the trap of law. So Bacon's essay is always guiding you towards perfect modes of living, perfect modes of life. And when we have studied his essay, we emerge fresh. We emerge as if we have shunned our bad habits, we have given up our bad habits, and we have developed a certain kind of positive attitude, and a kind of ethical and moral behavior is inculcated into our mind, and we start behaving in a proper manner. Dear students, in day to day life, we come to know about criminality, about murder, about bloodshed. What are all those things? They are only because people cannot tolerate other peoples today. They are bent on taking their revenge on petty grounds also. And Francis Bacon says very, very ethically and philosophically that if you forgive someone, it shows the nobility of your mind, it shows the quality of your mind, it shows your magnanimity and greatness of your character. Why? Why it shows the greatness and magnanimity of your character? Because you are not the judge. The judge is someone else. Because how can you judge who you are to judge that whether he has committed crime or not? The ultimate judge is the Almighty God. So here we see that Francis Bacon echoes Shakespeare, who was no less well versed and steeped in Christian theology of forgiveness. Francis Bacon too is well versed and deeply steeped in Christian etiquettes, Christian's ethics, that forgiveness always helps, revenge never helps. Because it is God who forgives, it is God who is merciful. So if you also forgive, if you also show a feeling of mercy, it means that you also develop a divine quality. Dear students, this is easier said than done. Why? Because we generally say a number of things, we generally speak about so many qualities of love, mercy, fellow feeling, brotherhood, etc. etc. But when it comes to practicality, when it comes to use, we throw the rules, we throw our principles, we throw our ideologies, we throw our principles to winds, and again we start behaving as a wayward person. But this should not happen, because Bacon has taught you to be a man of utilitarian purpose. In this world, if we are trying to exist, we have to work with a view of practicality and with a view to develop a sound practical knowledge. Dear students, today the world is moving very fast. In every area, if we go, people are jostling, hustling, bustling. There is din and noise. Everybody loses temper every now and then. And even in families, if you minutely watch, the situation is no less better. On petty issues, a small child loses temper or he gets offended because the father has promised to bring him a chocolate of his choice when he would come back from office. The father was busy and he forgot to drop by a shop and buy that chocolate of the choice of his son. When he returns, the child becomes angry. He pulls a long face. He doesn't talk to the father. And deep within his mind, he develops a kind of hatred towards the father. So, this feeling of hatred is also a kind of revenge. Because what is this? The revenge is not that if somebody has killed you, you have killed him. If somebody has killed your brother, you kill that person. You have killed that person. You'll go and kill that person. No. If you nurture any kind of grievances against someone, if you nurture any kind of ill willing towards someone, that is also a kind of revenge. So this is an undercurrent that we find in Bacon's of revenge. And Bacon's of revenge is not only an essay that was pertinent during the period when he wrote 400 years ago. No, it is pertinent even today. Why? See what happens. Blood begets blood. War begets war. Anger begets anger. So revenge begets revenge. Revenge has never been a solution. Forgiveness has been a solution. So this is a Christian element that we find in Francis Bacon. So from practicality of his essay, he has drawn our attention towards the religious aspect, towards the spiritual aspect. On practical ground, if you tell somebody that do not take revenge, if somebody has slapped on your one cheek, you offer your another cheek to him to slap. No. They will say that no, this is not a kind of justice. The justice lies that if he has slapped on my one cheek, I will slap him back on both of his cheeks. But this is not right according to Francis Bacon. Because this leads nowhere. And if we want that a situation is not created, we want that things should be reconciled, we have to think that way. And if we do not think that way, things will be blown out of all proportion. And Shakespeare from time to time has pointed out so many practicalities of life in his dramatic works. And I think that a contemporary of Shakespeare, Francis Bacon, must have also studied and analyzed the dramatic work, the dramatic technique, the themes, the manner, and the materials from that legend of English drama. Dear students, you will come across so many allusions, myths, similes, metaphors, and other imagery that Francis Bacon has used. I have told you in another video of mine that these figures of speech or these imagery are used by writers to make their ideas clearer and to make themselves understood in concrete terms. Ideas bring pictures in your mind, symbols bring pictures in your mind, and similes and metaphors make you think in a palpable way. Revenge is a kind of wild justice. This is an example of metaphor because Bacon has compared revenge to a justice that is wild, that does not produce any kind of solution, because war and bloodshed have never solved the problem. Rather, war and bloodshed had entangled the problem all the more. Dear students, when we are trying to write a critical appreciation of Bacon's of revenge, we have not only to refer to the theme of the essay, rather we also have to provide the critical comments. We also have to understand the allusions that he has given, the historical allusions of Julius Caesar, Pertinax, and Henry the Third, and the biblical allusions of Solomon and Job. Solomon is the wisest man, that is what he wants to say, and he says that to forgive is the glory of a person's mind. How beautiful it appears when you read the sentences of Bacon's of studies or of revenge or of love or any essay that he has penned down. You feel that such truth has been embedded in this fewness of words. His style is really remarkable. That how he has brought to put so many ideas within the fewness of words, and it is what Shakespeare has said that brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity is the soul of wit. That means to say that to say something in fewer number of words is the quality of you're saying something briefly, you're saying something pertinently, and this also reflects your clarity of thought. If your thought is not clear, you will not be able to speak or write in fewer number of words. You will be able to write in a fewer number of words only when we have thought very clearly, very straightforwardly. Otherwise, your essays tend to be sprawling. They do not become taut, they become loose. People start writing or speaking loosely. Students of literature or writers of literature can never afford to write loosely. They have to write tautly, they have to write succinctly, they have to write in a style that does not waste words. It is not a tautological expression. So Bacon has strenuously or spontaneously avoided tautology or the repetitive language. Yes, his language is aphoristic, his language is epigrammatic, and in Hindi we say that gagar mein sagar. That lots of wisdom, lots of thoughts have come within the span of a few words. But this conciseness, this brevity, this precision is not the result of a single day. It is not an overnight journey. It is a journey of every day. Every day we have to try to deliberately write something so that we develop a style of writing that is very fluid, that is very, very spontaneous, and gradually you will realize that ideas start materializing, ideas start culminating in your mind, and you are able to write properly. So, Of Revenge is a worth reading piece of essay which has in depth dealt with the nature and character and behavior of revenge, and Francis Bacon has dissuaded us from resorting to revenge. He has indirectly advised us to resort to love, to mercy, to fellow feeling, and leave the duty of judgment to the Almighty God. He is the only judge. And Shakespeare also maintains that you cannot judge because you are not the judge. The ultimate judge is the Almighty God. If the Almighty God is the ultimate judge, who are you to award punishment or reward? You have to maintain a perfect balance in your life, in your judgment, in your behavior. Dear students, I must remind you once again that there are so many complex sentences also in Francis Bacon. Sometimes we teachers also read and we are unable to understand, but you do not get tense. The only difference is that syntax has been used in a different way. Sometimes the structure of the sentence has been reversed. And you should not always look for a simple sentence structure like subject, verb, object, subject plus is mr plus v1 plus ing plus, and all those grammatical rules and regulations that we have been picking up since our high school days. So what happens that initially when you are writing as a beginner, you just try to think in terms of grammar. So when you have become very perfect and yeah, seasoned writer, those rules of grammar do not concern you. You transcend yourself far above that. They do not concern you, and you are able to write, in a very, very perfect manner. You know that rules of grammar help the beginner when you have assumed a quality of writing perfectly. You throw the rules of grammars to wind, and those who have started learning English just now, they see back in some of the complex sentences, complex lines, and they are at a loss. No, it is not a single day job. You have to sit with good dictionary, good English to English dictionary, or you are also advised initially to consult English to Hindi dictionary so that your understanding of Bacon's each and every sentence is crystal clear. If you become worried, if you become tense, if you do not want to journey into the hardness of the story, into the theme of the story, you will lag behind and no time will come. The best time is the present time and now, because what happens that if something is very hard, if something we don't understand, and we leave it aside. So do you think that you have done a very commendable thing? No. It shows the flimsiness of your mind. It shows the weakness of your mind, because you do not want to guzzle your brain. You do not want to work hard at language. We have to work hard, and only then we will find that we are able to understand not only Bacon's of studies or of revenge or of love, rather we will also be able to understand each and every essay that he has penned down, because in each of his essays his style does not vary very much. The basic style of Bacon's writing remains the same. The theme may differ, the subject matter may differ, but the style does not differ, because it is rightly said, style is the man. Every writer is unique and he has his unique style of writing. When we read Bacon's of studies, we quickly understand that, oh, this is Bacon's. Even if the name of writer is not given, even if the title is not given, and we come across some of the lines from here and there in newspaper or on other social sites, because, oh, it is Bacon's lines. If the study serves for delight, for ability, and for ornament. Example is that, oh, Bacon has written it. So read not to contradict or confute, nor to find talk or discourse, but to weigh and judge. So these are the oft-quoted lines of Bacon, and every sincere student of literature is aware of the prominent lines of Francis Bacon. Dear students, you have been the student of poetry also, and sometimes prose is also like poetry. So that prose which is having the quality of poetry we called poetic prose. So is there also prosaic poetry? No. Maybe the poetic prose and scientific prose, these are different things. The language of science is referential. It gives reference. It is aimed at communication. It is aimed at perspicuity. And the language of poetry or poetic creation is something different. It does not only denotate, it also connotates. It means that it also takes within its ambit ranges of meanings, the possible meanings. And William Empson, the great images poet, the great poet of the New Critical School, has written a book, Seven Types of Ambiguity, and he says that all those possible ambiguities of the word have to be studied. One word does not have only one meaning. The meaning of the word changes from context to context and from time to time also, and it is the duty of the writer or listener or the critic or the reader to use and puzzle their brain to understand how does a particular work behave in a particular context. Only then they can mean out. Dear students, we are not only the student of essay, we are also the students of criticism. And I have already told you in one video after another that criticism is the commentation and exposition of the works of art in hand, and a critic is an ideal reader. It simply means that if we do not read any piece of work ideally, do not confuse the word ideally with idly. It should be taken ideally, clearly. We cannot do justice with the piece of work. First, be a sincere reader of any piece of work and then try to understand what actually the writer wants to say. How does the mood of the writer change? How does the theme naturally grow or evolve from his starting point? How Bacon started with revenge is a kind of wild justice, and how he enumerated so many merits and demerits of revenge, that how revenge is not always justifiable under all the circumstances, and how it is on the part of the good man's mind that if he forgives someone, he reflects the goodness of the quality of the mind. And so it feels that gradually we pick up ideas, we try to assimilate what we think are good for our mind, and we normally try to discard what we think is unworthy. We have the liberty to critically comment when we have the liberty to defend what Bacon has said, and we also have the liberty to go against Bacon. You can also say ki, why if somebody has beaten me, why must I not take revenge? I must take revenge. So when you say anything for or against a topic or an issue, you must posit a logical reason, and that positing of the logical reason, positing of the logical proposition, is the work of a true critic. A true critic is a true judge. A critic is a man of wide knowledge and experiences and learning and understanding of the comprehensiveness of life. It is not very easy to pass judgment on Francis Bacon's of his studies or of revenge. We have to first analyze, because that is a creation. There must be certain kind of truth. There must be certain kind of poetic truth or thematic truth in whatever Bacon has said. First, we have to analyze it. First, we have to understand it. Then only we can agree or disagree. So I think that this is just a kind of exposition of the topic that I have given, and I think that I have triggered your curiosity to go back to this essay in your textbook, and I am sure that when you read the essay, you will enjoy reading it, and you will have developed certain kind of experiences. This will be worth reading. This is very much important for your examination point of view, and this is equally important for being a student of English literature, which is worth taking up. Dear students, it is now time for me to take my leave from you, but I take my leave from you with a promise that sooner or later I will come once again in front of you. Till then, take leave of you. You have to stay at home safe. You have to stay at home very well. Take care of yourself, take care of your health, and take care of your family members as well. Okay, thank you very much. Good night.